Good morning. Let me pour a cup of tea and we'll get into it, because today I'm doing something I've been meaning to do for a while. I'm walking you through everything I actually eat in a day. Not the version I'd write for a magazine, the real version. The one where I'm a busy doctor, I'm tired some mornings, and I still have to keep an eye on the same numbers I'm always nagging my patients about. My name is Callum Everhart. I've been a general practitioner for 17 years now, and if you'd told me a decade ago that I'd be sitting here talking to a camera about my own blood sugar, I'd have laughed. Because for most of my career, blood sugar was something I worried about for other people. It was a line on the lab report. It belonged to my patients, not to me. And then, a few years back, I ran my own blood work the way I make everyone else do it, and the number that came back for my average blood sugar, the one that reflects roughly the last 3 months, was higher than I wanted to see. Not diabetes, not even close really, but it had crept up, quietly, the way these things do. And I sat with that report in my hand and I thought, well, Callum, you've got a choice here. You can pretend you didn't see it, or you can do the thing you tell strangers to do every single day. So that's what this video is. Not a lecture, not a list of miracle foods, just a day, eaten by a man in his 50s, who would very much like to keep his brain, his heart, and his knees for another few decades, and who has learned that the fastest road to wrecking all three runs straight through your blood sugar. Let me explain why this matters before we even get to breakfast, because if you don't understand the why, none of the what is going to stick. When you eat, especially when you eat something sweet or starchy, the sugar from that food goes into your bloodstream. Your body doesn't like it floating around loose, so it sends out a hormone called insulin to shepherd that sugar out of the blood and into your cells, where it gets used for energy. That's a beautiful system when it works. The trouble is that if you spend years and years flooding that system with too much sugar, too fast, too often, your cells start to get tired of listening. They stop responding to insulin the way they should. Your body compensates by making more and more insulin, shouting louder and louder. And for a while it works, so you feel fine and your fasting numbers look normal, and you think nothing's wrong. But under the hood, the whole thing is straining. That straining phase can last 10 years, 15 years, before it ever shows up as a diagnosis. And that long, quiet phase is exactly where most of my patients are living, and most of them have no idea. So when I say I watch my blood sugar, I don't mean I'm sick. I mean, I'm trying to stay out of that quiet strain for as long as humanly possible. And the wonderful thing I've learned is that it isn't about deprivation. It's about a handful of small, almost boring decisions, repeated. Let me show you mine. I wake up somewhere around 6, and here's the first thing that surprises people. I don't eat straight away. There's a reason for that, and it's got nothing to do with fasting fads. Early in the morning, before you've eaten anything at all, your liver is quietly releasing stored sugar into your blood to get you going for the day. It's an ancient wake-up mechanism. We call it the dawn effect, and it means that for a lot of us, especially as we get older, our blood sugar is naturally a bit higher first thing in the morning than it was at midnight. Nobody teaches you that, and it confuses people terribly. They test in the morning, see a number that's higher than they expected, and panic. So the first thing I do isn't food at all. It's water. A big glass of it. Because I've been asleep for 8 hours, breathing out moisture the whole time, and I've woken up mildly dehydrated, and dehydration can nudge your blood sugar readings up too. Then I move. Even if it's just wandering around the kitchen, opening curtains, letting the dog out. Movement first thing gently tells my muscles to start pulling sugar out of my blood, and it costs me nothing. Then, yes, coffee. Or on the days my stomach's feeling delicate, tea, black. And this is where I have to be honest with you, because this is where so many people go wrong before they've even sat down. It is not the coffee that's the problem. The coffee is fine. It's what people put in it. A large flavored coffee drink from the shop on the corner can carry as much sugar as a can of soda, sometimes more. People sip it thinking it's a coffee. It's a dessert wearing a coffee's coat. So mine is black, or with a splash of whole milk or cream, which barely moves my blood sugar at all because fat and a little protein don't spike you the way sugar does. Now, breakfast. And I want you to really pay attention here, because if you change one meal in your whole day, this is the one that gives you the most for your money. For years, the standard idea of a healthy breakfast has been a bowl of cereal, maybe some toast, a glass of orange juice. And on paper, it sounds wholesome. In your bloodstream, it's a disaster. Think about what that meal actually is. It's refined grain, which turns into sugar almost the instant it hits you. It's fruit juice, which is essentially sugar water with the fiber stripped out. And it arrives on an empty stomach, first thing in the morning, when your liver has already lifted your blood sugar up on its own. So you take a system that's already elevated and you pour gasoline on it. Your blood sugar rockets up, your body panics and floods you with insulin to bring it down, and it overcorrects, and by 10 or 11 in the morning, you crash. You feel foggy, shaky, ravenously hungry, and you reach for a snack, and the whole roller coaster starts again. That crash isn't a character flaw. It isn't a lack of willpower, it's chemistry. It's the predictable consequence of how you started your morning. So here's what's actually on my plate. Protein first. Almost always eggs, 2 or 3 of them, sometimes with a bit of smoked salmon, sometimes with leftover vegetables from the night before thrown in a pan. Protein is the quiet hero of blood sugar. It digests slowly, it barely raises your sugar at all, and it keeps you full for hours, which means you're not hunting for a pastry at 10:30. Alongside that, I want fiber and I want fat, because both of them act like brakes. Fiber physically slows down how fast sugar gets absorbed from your gut. Fat slows the whole meal down too. So I'll have some avocado, or a handful of spinach wilted into the eggs, or a few berries, not juice, because the whole fruit still has its fiber intact and behaves completely differently in your body than the juice does. And if I want something with a bit of chew, I'll go for a proper whole grain, dense, seedy bread, the kind that's more seed than fluff, toasted, with butter. Not the soft white stuff that dissolves the moment it touches your tongue. The difference between my breakfast and the cereal and juice breakfast isn't that mine is virtuous and theirs is naughty. The difference is that mine holds my blood sugar steady, like a hand on the small of your back, all morning long. And steady is the entire game. Steady is what keeps your energy even, your cravings quiet, your mood level, and your body out of that constant boom and crash cycle that grinds people down over the years. Let me give you one more trick that costs nothing, and it's about the order you eat things. This surprises people every single time. If you eat the same exact meal but you eat your vegetables and your protein first and save the starchy, sweet part for last, your blood sugar rises significantly less than if you'd eaten the bread and potatoes first. Same food, same calories, different order, different result. Because by the time the starch arrives, there's already fiber and protein sitting in your stomach forming a kind of barrier, slowing everything down. I do this without even thinking about it now. Salad first, meat second, the roll comes last if it comes at all. Now I want to stop here for a second because I'm genuinely curious about something. And this is the part where I need you to do a little work for me. I want you to tell me down in the comments what your normal breakfast is, right now. The real one, not the one you'd like it to be. Because I read these, and I promise you that whatever you write, you are not alone. And I'd love to know what I'm actually working with here. So tell me, is it cereal? Is it nothing at all until noon? Is it a big flavored coffee and a prayer? Write it down, be honest. And while you're there, if this is making sense so far, let me know. Because I have a lot more to say, and I want to know you're with me. Right, back to the day. Mid-morning, I don't usually snack. And that's not discipline, it's the payoff. Because I built my breakfast the way I did, I'm simply not hungry, so the question of what to snack on doesn't even come up. This is the thing people miss when they try to fix their eating by willpower alone. They eat a breakfast that guarantees a crash, then they try to white-knuckle their way through the crash without a snack, and they lose, every time, because you cannot out-discipline your own blood chemistry. Fix the breakfast, and the mid-morning battle simply disappears. If I do want something, say I've got a long clinic and I know I won't eat till 2, it'll be a small handful of nuts, or a bit of cheese, or an apple with some nut butter. Something with fat and protein in it, never sugar on its own, never a biscuit standing alone, because a naked biscuit at 11 in the morning is just a booking for a 2 o'clock crash. Lunch. Now lunch is where a lot of working people fall apart, because they're busy, they grab something fast, and fast food is engineered to spike you. My lunch is deliberately simple, and it almost always has the same shape, regardless of what's actually in it. Half the plate, or more, is vegetables or salad. A good palm-sized portion is protein. Could be chicken, could be fish, could be lentils and beans if I'm going meat-free that day, which I do more often now than I used to. And then a smaller portion of a slower carbohydrate, something like proper whole grains or beans or a sweet potato, rather than a mountain of white rice or a giant sandwich on soft bread. The plate looks generous. I'm never hungry after it. But it doesn't send my blood sugar to the ceiling, because there's so much fiber and protein in there holding the line. And then I do this single most underrated thing in this entire video. After lunch, I go for a walk. 10 minutes, 15 if I can. And I cannot overstate how powerful this is because it feels almost too simple to matter. Here's what's happening. When you contract your muscles, even gently, even just strolling around the block, those muscles reach out and pull sugar directly out of your blood to fuel the movement. And they do it without needing much insulin at all. So a short walk right after a meal, while the sugar from that meal is arriving in your bloodstream, acts like a pressure valve. It shaves the top right off the spike. There's research showing that a brief walk after eating blunts the blood sugar rise meaningfully. And the best window is roughly the first half hour to an hour after you finish, because that's when the sugar's flooding in. I tell my patients this constantly, and the ones who actually do it come back astonished, because they can feel it. That heavy, sleepy, need to lie down feeling you get after a big lunch, a lot of that is your blood sugar spiking and crashing. Walk instead, and the fog lifts. Which brings me to the afternoon. And the afternoon is where the day is won or lost for most people. Because if you crashed at lunch, 3 or 4 o'clock is when the wheels come off. That's when the drawer of sweets opens. That's when someone brings biscuits into the office, and your resistance is at rock bottom. And again, I want to keep saying this because it matters. That 4 o'clock craving is not weakness. It is a chemical signal from a body that's been thrown around all day. If your morning and your lunch kept you steady, the 4 o'clock monster barely shows up. On the days it does visit me, because I'm human and some days go sideways, I don't reach for sugar, because sugar at 4 o'clock is a loan you pay back with a crash at 5. I have a square or two of very dark chocolate, the bitter kind with very little sugar in it, and it does the job beautifully. Or a cup of tea and a small handful of nuts. The point isn't to be a monk about it. The point is to reach for the thing that steadies you rather than the thing that spins you up. Let me talk about movement for a moment more broadly because it's woven right through my day, not just after lunch. Your muscles are the biggest sponge for blood sugar that you own. The more muscle you carry and the more you use it, the more places your body has to safely stash sugar, and the less of it ends up doing damage floating around in your blood. This is one of the quietest tragedies of getting older. We lose muscle as the years go by if we don't fight for it. And as that muscle disappears, that big, beautiful sponge shrinks, and our blood sugar control gets worse, purely because we've lost the tissue that used to soak it up. So I lift weights. Nothing dramatic, nothing heroic, just a few sessions a week of picking up heavy things and putting them down. I'm not doing it to look like a bodybuilder, I'm doing it to keep the sponge big. It is, hands down, one of the most powerful things you can do for your blood sugar as the decades stack up. And it's the thing people skip the most. Now, dinner. And there are 2 decisions at dinner that matter more than what's actually on the plate. And the first one is when. I try to eat dinner earlier rather than later, and I try to leave a decent gap between my last bite and going to bed. There's a good reason. Late in the evening, your body is winding down, getting ready for sleep, and it handles blood sugar worse at night than it does earlier in the day. A big plate of pasta at 9 at night sits in your system differently than the same plate at 6. So if I can eat earlier and let my body process the meal while I'm still up and moving, everything runs smoother and I sleep better for it. When people tell me they eat a huge dinner at 10 at night and then wonder why their morning numbers are off and their sleep is broken, this is very often part of the story. The second decision is the shape of the plate, and it's the same shape as lunch. Vegetables leading the way, a solid portion of protein, some healthy fat, and a modest amount of a slow carbohydrate if I want it. A typical dinner for me is something like a piece of salmon, a big pile of roasted vegetables cooked in olive oil, and maybe some lentils or a small serving of a whole grain. It is not a sad meal. I want to be really clear about that because there's this idea floating around that eating for your blood sugar means eating like a rabbit and suffering. It doesn't. My dinners have butter and olive oil and salt and flavor and satisfaction in them. They're just built so that the sugar in them arrives slowly and gently instead of all at once. I'd genuinely rather eat this way than the way I used to. And I say that as a man who loves food. Let me deal with the questions I know you're all thinking. Starting with dessert. Do I have dessert? Sometimes yes. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I've never eaten a slice of cake. But I've changed the way I do it. If I'm going to have something sweet, I have it right after a proper meal, never on its own on an empty stomach. Because if you eat something sweet after a full plate of protein and fiber and fat, all of that acts as a buffer. And the same dessert causes a much smaller spike than it would if you'd eaten it alone in the afternoon. So the timing of your treats matters almost as much as the treats themselves. A little sweet thing at the end of a real dinner is a very different creature than the same sweet thing standing alone at 3 in the afternoon. And then there's alcohol, which comes up all the time. Here's the honest picture. Alcohol is complicated for blood sugar. Some drinks, especially sweet cocktails, beer, and sugary mixers, are essentially liquid sugar, and they'll spike you. But alcohol also does a strange thing where it can drop your blood sugar low a few hours later, sometimes overnight, because it interferes with your liver's ability to release its stored sugar. So the sweet drinks spike you now, and the alcohol can drop you later, and it can leave you feeling awful. I keep it modest. I keep it mostly to drier options like a glass of wine. I never drink it on an empty stomach. And honestly, I have it far less than I used to, because I sleep so much better without it. And that leads me to the last piece, which is the piece nobody wants to hear. Sleep and stress. These two things sabotage your blood sugar in a way that has nothing to do with what's on your fork. And I'd be lying to you if I did a whole video about food and left them out. When you don't sleep well, and I mean even one bad night, your body becomes more resistant to insulin the very next day. Your cells listen less, your blood sugar runs higher, and you crave more sugar, because a tired brain goes hunting for fast fuel. So you can eat a perfect breakfast and still have a rough day if you slept 4 hours. And stress does something similar through a different door. When you're stressed, your body releases stress hormones that deliberately push sugar into your blood. Because in the old days, stress meant danger, meant you needed energy to run. But when the stress is a difficult email or a worry that grinds on all day and never resolves, that sugar goes up and just stays there, with nowhere to go. I've watched patients clean up their entire diet and see almost no change in their numbers. And it turned out the real culprit was that they were sleeping terribly and living in a state of low, constant stress. Food is huge, but it sits inside a bigger picture. And if the sleep and the stress are broken, the food alone can only carry you so far. So that's my day. Water and movement and coffee to start, a breakfast built on protein and fiber, no snacking because I don't need it, a simple lunch followed by that magic little walk, a steady afternoon, an earlier dinner shaped the same way, a treat now and then handled with a bit of timing, and a real effort to protect my sleep and keep my stress from running the show. None of it is dramatic. That's rather the point. The people who fix their blood sugar aren't the ones who find some exotic secret. They're the ones who make a handful of unremarkable decisions, over and over, until the decisions stop feeling like decisions and just become the way they live. And I want to leave you with the thing I most want you to hear, because I think it's where people get it wrong. This is not about being perfect. I am not perfect. I have bad days. I eat cake at birthdays. I've had mornings where I skip the walk because I'm running late, and the whole plan goes out the window. It doesn't matter. Blood sugar isn't scored on any single meal or any single day. It's scored on the average, on the pattern, on what you mostly do most of the time. So if you take one thing from all of this, don't take a rigid set of rules that you'll break by Thursday and then abandon in shame. Take the idea of steady. Ask yourself, at each meal, one simple question. Is this going to keep me steady, or is this going to spike me and crash me? Protein and fiber and a short walk keep you steady. Refined sugar and starch on an empty stomach spike you. That's the whole thing. That's the entire secret, and there's no fine print. If your blood work has been creeping up like mine was, please don't wait for it to become a diagnosis before you start paying attention. That quiet strain I talked about at the beginning, that 10 or 15 years before anything shows up, that's not a warning to be afraid of. It's an opportunity. It's the longest, most generous window your body will ever give you to change course. And almost nobody uses it, because almost nobody knows it's there. Now you do. Go and check your own numbers. Ask your doctor for that 3-month blood sugar average next time you're in, and actually look at it. And whatever it says, remember that the food on your fork tomorrow morning has a bigger say in where that number goes than almost anything else in your life. I'll see you in the next one. Look after yourselves and drink some water. You're probably a little dehydrated right now, and now you know why that matters.